I'm Holly Rushmeyer, and I'm a professor of computer science here at Yale University. I advise all of our master's students as well as PhD students who are doing research in the area of computer graphics, my area of specialty. And I was really looking forward to coming to the Tapia conference, but a family situation came up that has prevented me from traveling this week. But I wanted to say a few things about the choice of MS versus PhD, both having gone through that decision myself and having advised many students. And I'd like to start out saying that they are both equally valuable, good decisions to make. Whether you go for the MS or the PhD really depends on what you see yourself doing, what you like to do. And I think essentially the decision point is, are you interested in senior positions in industry, maybe moving up the ladder in industry, in which case probably I would recommend something like the MS, or if you really enjoy the process of research, then I would advise the PhD. And let me go into that in more depth. In particular, there are lots of different flavors of master's degrees, and both in the master's and PhD programs, while most schools operate in the same way, there is a lot of variations in the details about how people run things. So let me first start with going for the master's degree. Often these programs are called a terminal master's, which is a really hideous name for it. It basically means people who apply to do a master's with the idea that they will leave school afterwards, hence the name terminal. There are a couple major types of master's degree. One is just courses, with possibly a project being one of those courses, typically maybe 8 courses in 1 year's time. And then there's a thesis master's, where it may be 1.5 to 2 years, where in addition to taking courses, you do a small research project that might result in either a conference or journal paper. In the courses-only master's program, which is what we have here at Yale, some people award a Master of Science at the end, some people award a Master of Engineering. There's no hard and fast rules for what name people give these degrees. So the motivation here is you want to have a more senior position in industry, and so you're taking more courses to get more technical depth, and perhaps to step up into management level, supervising other people in a company faster. But it's primarily coursework, and it's just diving into subjects in more depth. The master's degree with thesis is kind of in between, in particular if you're not really sure yet which path you want to go on. It's good for going into industry, more senior positions, but it also gives you more of a taste of what research is. If you're not sure if you like doing research, it's a way to experiment with it, but get something out of the degree in a relatively short amount of time, and possibly leaving if you find that the research doesn't suit you. I would say that as far as lifetime earnings, I would say the master's is the optimal degree. For the courses only, there's not so much financial support. You may end up having to pay the tuition and housing the same debt as what you do as an undergraduate. You can probably apply for scholarships, fellowships, but there's not that much financial assistance for the courses-only masters. When you do the research masters, there may be financial support. You may be a teaching assistant to earn that support that would pay your tuition and possibly give a stipend. And that may be for the whole term of your master's, or it could be just for the second research portion of the master's. So, but for the lifetime's earning, even though you may have to actually pay for all the tuition and so forth yourself, it does result in a higher paying job than you probably would have had with a bachelor's degree. So over your lifetime, it will pay off over having just gone into industry with a bachelor's degree. Now the PhD is a completely different operation. First of all, I should say, if you know you just want the master's and you want to go into industry, then apply to the so-called terminal master's program. If you know you love research already, then you should apply directly to a PhD program, even if you don't already have a master's. Typically what will happen as you work towards the PhD, you'll be awarded a master's along the way. So don't think that you have to apply for a master's program and then apply for a PhD program. If you're interested in research, apply for the PhD directly. So what does it mean to love research? Well, that means you like reading technical papers. If you get into an area doing a literature survey, reading lots and lots of technical papers and comparing them, synthesizing what they have to say, taking a problem that's out in the real world and defining it as something that can be solved computationally. It means you enjoy coming up with new algorithms or doing proofs or implementing big systems. Possibly not all of those activities, but one of those activities you really get into. You enjoy designing experiments. You're willing to deal with your first hot idea to get this done is not going to work, and you have to do it over and over again, and then eventually having success and going through the process of writing up all of your results and publishing either a conference or journal paper. I would say for the PhD, it's mainly if you love research. Even though you will probably get financial assistance for the PhD program, that is, if you're accepted in a PhD program, you can expect that your tuition will be paid and that you'll get a small stipend. But the stipend you get is not going to be anything like what you could earn in industry. It's going to be less than half. It's going to be enough to live on. So, and it typically takes, rather than the 1 or 2 years for the master's, it's going to take 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years, depending on your particular research area, to finish the PhD, which means that you're if you look at the income you are losing that you could have made as someone working in the computer industry, it's going to be very hard to make up over your lifetime to compensate for those years that you took the low stipend versus what you would have earned if you had done the master's degree. So you don't do the PhD to get higher earning jobs or to qualify even for higher paying jobs. You do them because you love research and you plan to either go to a government or industry research lab where there are a relatively limited number of positions, or else to university or college, either to teach at the college level or to teach and do research at a university. So I would say that the choice is really what you enjoy and where you see yourself going with your career. In answer to some of the questions, what was your main motivation behind attaining a PhD? What did you go in thinking? Well, I often hesitate to tell my story because it's a bit unusual, but then I realized everybody has a unique story. My story is, after my bachelor's degree, I graduated in 1977 with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I was exhausted. I was so tired of school. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I was kind of anxious about what work would be like and if I could be successful on a job. So I worked for 6 years, first at the Boeing company out in Seattle, and then for a natural gas company. I was married, and I still am, to the same person. We got married as undergraduates. And while we were out there working, my husband got laid off, and he decided what did he want to do after he got laid off his job. And he realized, well, he wanted to go to graduate school. So he applied to PhD programs and got in a PhD program at Cornell, where we had done our undergraduates. There's not much else to do at Cornell unless you're going to the university. So I thought, I'll go too. Initially, I applied to the master's with thesis program with the idea like, well, if my husband doesn't make it in the PhD program, I'll be able to finish a degree. As it turned out, my husband did really well in the PhD program, so since he was staying, and actually I enjoyed the research I was doing, then I decided to stay for a PhD as well. And we were both basically looking at getting the PhD and getting academic positions afterwards. Another question is, did you ever reach a breaking point during grad school? How did you overcome it? My worst time in graduate school was at the end of my third year. There was the so-called A exam, the admission to candidacy for the PhD. That's after finishing all the courses and entering into the phase where you're going to just do research. I had felt my 3 years had gone well, and then my advisor said to me, the A exam is a serious exam. And that terrified me. I really had a hard time eating or doing anything for weeks. I don't know how I said I overcame this, but I survived those weeks. The A exam was an oral exam. You stand in front of your committee. They ask you all sorts of questions about your studies and then also your plans for your research. I managed to stand up there and answer the questions, and I passed the exam. And I think once that was done, I was confident and was able to just enjoy doing research for the remaining 2 years I was in the PhD program. What can be a possible situation where you would not recommend someone considering doing a PhD? Well, if you don't enjoy the research process, if you don't enjoy either doing proofs or creating new algorithms or building big systems no one has ever built before or designing experiments, if you don't enjoy that kind of activity and writing the papers, and it's not for everyone, it's a specific kind of activity. If you don't enjoy research, don't do the PhD. If you really see yourself being a software engineer or managing software engineers and advancing in industry, go for the master's. Did you do your BS, MS, and PhD from the same school? What, in your opinion, is the advantage of doing it one way or the other? Well, I not only got all my degrees at the same school, Cornell University. Cornell is in the town where I grew up, so I did my kindergarten through PhD all in the same town, Ithaca. And, it was home, and I was happy there, and I had my family, so it was a big advantage going to school in the same place that I grew up, and everything was familiar, and I had tremendous family support. Overall, most people recommend that you do your PhD work at or master's at a different place, just to get the experience of how different places operate. I think a lot of the students I advise in the master's program, one of the big advantages is seeing what the Yale environment is like. Most of my master's students went to a very technical school beforehand, and here at Yale we have a strong technical computer science MS, but you're embedded in this environment of humanities and social science. It's very interesting. It's just a very different environment where you learn different things and how to interact with different people. And in general, it is good to make that step and change. Any interesting experience you would like to share as being a female in the CS field? Well, for one thing, I started in mechanical engineering and then sort of evolved into computer science as I did my PhD, although my PhD is officially in mechanical engineering. But now I'm a computer science professor. So for one thing, I feel like I went from a field with very few women to a lot more women. But I like engineering and technology as a woman because there are a lot of objective measures of whether you've achieved something. People, if you build a system and your code works, nobody can say, oh, that's women's code, it's not good. If it works, it works. We have objective measures. I have a lot of friends who have gone into things like hotel or retail or art and humanities, and those areas can be really rough on women, particularly as there's a lot of subjective evaluation, and bias against women gets thrown in with a whole basket of other things that are going on. And I feel like being in technology, we have a big advantage that there are objective measures of what we achieve. And I've always liked that in working in both engineering and computer science. And I've always felt very comfortable in the field. In hindsight, looking at your career path and transitions, was a PhD needed to do that? Well, yes. After I finished the PhD, I was on the faculty at Georgia Tech. You can't get, these days it's very, very rare to get a faculty position without a PhD. And I enjoyed my time there, met a lot of interesting different people, got more into my computer graphics research. Then I worked at the National Institute of Standards and Technology doing research, again a place where it's very hard to get those, there's not that many industry and government and lab research jobs, so you really do need the PhD for them. Again, when I was at NIST, I met people in all other fields. I was doing visualization, so I got to meet people doing research in material science and fire research. It was fascinating. Then I worked for IBM Watson Research Lab, and again, there were a few people who didn't have PhDs in the lab, but you really didn't have the freedom in working in projects if you didn't have a PhD. And now for the last 12 years I've been at Yale, and certainly I couldn't get this faculty position without having a PhD. So yes, if you want to do research, go for the PhD. Thank you very much.